Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Throne of Steel episode number 192 based on novel. So let's start. Never before in the history of the Temple Federation that such a high-level officer's experience had been shown so clearly in the eyes of the public. What the Temple Federal officials just said not only aroused people's greater curiosity and got them fully absorbed in the story, but also made them feel that they were respected. For a moment, everyone's attention was completely attracted by the magic screens. For the first time, they knew that the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group, which once shone brilliantly in the temple, had gone deep into the Devil Clan, defeated two pillars of the Devil Gods, and bravely went to Modu in order to kill the Star Devil God. Even the God of Devils did not hesitate to mobilize the three most powerful races of the Devil to set a trap against them. What does the magic image show? When the curiosity of the public were fully aroused, the magic image began to unfold. 10 huge magic screens bloomed with dazzling brilliance almost at the same time, and the bright golden light brought a strong sense of shock to all the people. The golden light gradually converged, and the first thing that appeared in their sight was a grove. A low voice of discussion suddenly rang out. Look! Isn't that the hunter of the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group? That's Vice Chairman Cai'er. Look, that's Vice Chairman Chen Yinger. She is now the Deputy Master of the Temple of Souls. Look at that bald head. That's Maxian, the strongest commandment priest in the temple. I still like that wizard. The phoenix skill he used in the temple contest is amazing. The voices of the people were overshadowed by the voices in the images. In the image, Chen Yinger cried bitterly that she lost her voice while everyone gathered around Long Haochen, who was lying on the ground. Cai'er squatted down slowly and looked at the blue ring on her finger. She gently took off the ring, pulled up Long Haochen's left hand and put it on his ring finger. Fool, why did you give it back to me? This belongs to you forever, just like my heart. Cai'er's voice was very small, but after magnifying the magical image, it could be heard clearly by everyone there. Just for a moment, they immediately and clearly felt the deep sadness in Cai'er's voice. The emotion that was more sorrowful than the death of the heart instantly attracted the hearts of every person. They stopped their discussion instantly and all were quietly looking at the film on the magic screen. Cai'er raised his hand and slowly took off the necklace of eternal melody on Long Haochen's neck. The golden skull shone brightly in the magical image. When Cai'er wore the eternal melody around his neck, the people had the same question in their hearts: what is that? Let's go. Cai'er's voice sounded, and then the people saw a dazzling scene. The intense golden light shone from the necklace of eternal melody, covered everyone's body entirely, and the next moment, with the rise of the golden light, the image became blurred. In a series of twists, the scene changed to another setting place. At this time, the narrator's voice rang up. They teleport into another plane, the world of an artifact. The golden skeleton is called Eternal Melody, which is the key to the artifact. And the creator of this artifact is... That was the end of the narration, and the picture became clear again. Cai'er's anxious voice sounded. Come out, you come out. Come on out. A green brilliance crept out silently from Long Haochen's fine golden base armor, and the green brilliance then looked faint, like a wisp of smoke. A faint voice sounded in the green smoke. He is dead. My contract with him is also disappearing. All I can do is keep his soul alive for 7 days. However, you only have 7 days. The only chance to revive him is in this Tower of Eternity. Only when you get the inheritance of the master of this tower, with the secret meaning of the magic of the undead, is it possible to restore his soul and recast his heart. If he can come back to life, the contract I left with him will be restored. Otherwise, after 7 days, his soul will disappear, and his soul will be imprisoned in the Tower of Eternity. So, if you cannot bring him back to life in 7 days, take him out of here, at least so that his soul will not suffer. The sound came to an end, and the green clouds dispersed with it. That voice is, Wang Yuanyuan said blankly. I know. It's the little girl from the Dream Shrine. Yes, it must be her, Lin Xin jumped up and said. Han Yu grabbed Lin Xin by the shoulder and shouted excitedly, yes. It's Yi Xiaolei. It's her. There is some kind of contractual relationship between her and the commander. She's here to help us. The commander has a chance to come back to life. He has a chance. What shocked the public the most was what Han Yu said, that the commander had a chance to come back to life. People can be resurrected when they are dead? What is the secret meaning of the magic of the undead? What is a recasting heart? What is the inheritance of the Tower of Eternity? The fog made everyone a little dull. Who has a strong rope or chain? Cai'er's loud cry awakened the public from their thoughts. Then they saw the scene in which Cai'er, with the help of her friends, carried Long Houchen's body on her back and tied it up with chains. Seeing this, many people felt as if they had something choking in their throats. Although many people knew that this hunter group had done a lot for the Union, it was only when they saw this magical film that they really realized how many difficulties this hunter group had experienced. 7 days. We only have 7 days. In 7 days, we must climb to the top of the Tower of Eternity. I want to get the inheritance of the Deathly Hallows, the scourge of the undead, Electrolux. Cai'er's manifestation sounded in the image, and a name was also imprinted in the hearts of the people, the Deathly Hallows, the scourge of the undead, Electrolux. What kind of existence is he? Before the people had enough time to think, the picture changed again. Cai'er had begun to lead the members of the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group to challenge the Tower of Eternity. Here, the plot and facts of the magic images had changed slightly, and in order to give people a better sense of substitution, this test began from the first level. The powerful 12 sacred saints began to appear in the eyes of the people. Hunters fell one after another. By watching them sacrifice themselves to pave the way for Long Houchen's resurrection, the public began to tear up. In order to revive their commander, to revive Chairman Long Houchen, every hunter of the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group had given out everything. In the eyes of ordinary people, one's life was the most precious thing, but their dedications were selfless. Sima Xian fell, Chen Ying'er fell, and then Wang Yuanyuan fell. However, no matter how they fell, their eyes were full of persistency and hope. As the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group ascended towards the Tower of Eternity, the hearts of the people raised high and many people were even crying. They held their breath and dared not even cry too much because they were afraid they'd missed any moment of the picture. On the 6th floor of the Tower of Eternity, only Cai'er was left to fight. The sickle of death in her hand was held high, facing the most difficult test. Lin Xin's voice became the narrator. Deputy Commander, this is to her power of death. Every time she uses this unique power, she loses her own sense. The simple narration brought a more profound shock. Next, Cai'er was duty-bound to fight the 7 deaths, the first, the early death, the second, the purity of death, the third, the roar of death, the fourth, the kiss of death, the fifth, the fading death, and the 6th was the path of death. The people witnessed with their own eyes what her power was. When Cai'er finally defeated her opponent by the virtue of her 7 deaths power, the 6th, the path of death, there were tsunami-like cheers in the square outside the trial ground of the holy city. More often weep for joy. But what they did not know was that their tears were just the beginning. 6 colors of light appeared and healed the wounds of Long Houchen. Watching his injuries healed one by one, or even him being pulled back from his death line, the people's anxious hearts had a strong sense of relief and relaxation. Is it finally over? Are you going to revive Chairman Long Houchen? And then, a more brutal scene also unfolded, the road to heaven. One step at a time, the road to heaven leads to heaven. The narrator said, on the road to heaven, all forces will be suppressed, and Vice Chairman Cai'er will only have the power of ordinary girls. A very simple introduction, but immediately made the public understand what kind of pressure Cai'er experienced. Cai'er's pace was very stable. She took a step, kneeled, bowed down and then got up. One more step, one more kneel. Over and over again. People began to see sweat and blood stains. 2 blood stains began to appear on the endless road to the sky, from shallow to deep. Gradually, the 3rd blood stain from Cai'er's forehead also appeared. After all, the people were just ordinary people and they were much more fragile than the hunters. The scene of tears and loss of voice of all the people in the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group immediately turned the surrounding area of the holy city into a sea of tears. Many people couldn't help themselves and just burst into tears. Level 50. Level 60. Level 70. Evil 80. Cai'er took each step with great difficulty as she was stumbling while walking upward. Her body had already begun to shake, and the bloodstains left on the ground began to show liquid blood flowing down the stairs. In the film Cai'er was close to collapsing, but still kept climbing and climbing. Somehow, there seemed to be an unparalleled force supporting her body which was becoming more and more fragile. Bang! On the 112th step, Cai'er suddenly fell down and hit the steps in front of her. However, her right hand ruthlessly carved onto the surface of the ladder firmly, and her toes were on the lower steps to prevent herself from slipping down the stairs. The blood, stained red on the hem of her long skirt, slid down towards her feet. Kia's beautiful face was already covered with blood. Her body was trembling violently because she had suffered too much, but her eyes were still persistent and firm. Gasping violently, she merely moved up another step again. She was banging and kowtowing again. "Stop!" Voices rang out anonymously from the crowd. It immediately aroused the people that watched the film to cry out. She climbed and fell into a coma. Then, she climbed again and fell in coma all over again. Cai'er fell and got up again, and when she climbed the 200th step, her entire body was covered with blood. By this time, she had been in coma for the 7th time on her way to heaven. Cai'er's knees had no complete flesh, with bones exposed, and her white, slender legs were always unconsciously cramping at this time. Her whole body showed a morbid pallor due to excessive blood loss. She was losing her life at an alarming rate. However, she still could not see the end of the road to heaven. So far the image of Cai'er had been deeply imprinted in the hearts of everyone who were watching it. The voice of the narrator sounded again. Vice Chairman Cai'er was in a coma for several days during the climbing of the road to heaven. What the image reproduces is already a time-compressed scene. This could no longer be described as a simple shock, and some of the more vulnerable female audience had passed out while crying hoarsely. Even the federal soldiers responsible for maintaining order had already burst into tears. For the first time, they knew that humans could be so strong, and it was the first time that they had truly witnessed the suffering that the hunters had suffered. Just when the mood of the people was about to collapse, a light door finally appeared on the way to the sky. When Cai'er made an all-out jump and finally integrated into the door of light, there was already a choking cheer outside the Holy League trial ground. The 7th floor of the dazzling Tower of Eternity appeared, and so did the sleeping coffin of Electrolux. For ordinary people, they were born with a strong fear of the undead. However, after previous violent emotional fluctuations, they were not so shocked when they saw Electrolux in the form of the undead again. Electrolux proposed that he needed a fresh heart to revive Long Houchen. When Cai'er turned her sickle of death into herself without hesitation, the scream almost overturned the holy city. And when Electrolux proposed to Cai'er to test Long Houchen, almost all the people agreed. It was because they strongly questioned how Chairman Long Houchen deserved what Cai'er had done for him. Long Houchen woke up and faced the test of Electrolux. When he said he was willing to give up his faith in order to save Cai'er, the blood of the whole audience was boiling. They finally knew that it was not only Cai'er who felt so passionate about love, but their federal president also felt the same. It was because the people they loved most were willing to give up beliefs that were more precious than life. At this moment, the status of Cai'er and Long Houchen in their hearts had been sublimated to an indescribable height. Did faith and the undead matter? No, in front of this sincere love, everything seemed to be small. Especially when Electrolux said, "You've won," the cheers of the audience broke out again. The role of the magic image had completely exceeded the original conjecture of Li Shengxi of the Magic Temple, and it completely exceeded the imagination of all the initiators of this incident. Unexpectedly, the people went almost crazy for this magic image. They were shouting the names of Long Houchen and Cai'er while releasing their emotions heartily. With the previous groundwork, Electrolux would be much more acceptable to the public if he were to tell his story. Electrolux's tragic experiences, and his final awakening and self-purification under the awakening of Long Houchen and Cai'er, finally deeply shocked the minds of the people. At the end of the image, Electrolux shouted, holding the sun and moon to pick the stars, "There is no one like me in the world," with a shocking passion. At this time, the night gradually darkened, but none of the people had left. After a brief silence and calm, the three names of Long Houchen, Cai'er, and Light Dawn Demon Hunter Group became their slogans. One sleepless night of the Holy City. Jinengwen. It was noon, and it was time for lunch. In an inconspicuous hotel, the heated discussion made the hotel sounded very noisy. "Still going tonight?" "No, I'm not going." A woman shook her head forcefully and rejected the proposal of the man at the same table. "Why don't you go? It's only for 10 days. If you don't look at it, you won't be able to see it. I can't go anymore. If I go again, I will cry blindly. Vice Chairman Cai'er is so pitiful. The devils are so hateful. If it were not for my poor qualifications, I would have joined the army and fought against the enemy. Don't say you're a woman. Even I, a big man, have watched once and cried once. It's so touching. No wonder the chairman and vice chairman were able to do so many things at a young age. We can't imagine what other people have been through." True. The scourge of the undead, Electrolux, is also quite pitiful. So, the powerful necromancer is completely forced by reality. Yes, who can be infallible? In the end, didn't he already repent? And was purified by the vice chairman Cai'er. After seeing this film, I know that the undead can also have thoughts and wisdom, and not just all about killing. Similar topics were almost everywhere in the streets of Janangwan. The magic film was immediately transmitted to the Temple of the Federal, the Holy City, and 6 major fortresses for broadcast. Other inland cities were still in the process of transporting magic screens. After all, there were limited numbers of magic screens, and there were only a few cities that had the required conditions to release the film. After the first wave of the Holy City and the 6 fortresses, the magic screens of these 7 cities would also be removed and sent to inland cities. There had never been such an influential event in the history of the Union, or in the history of all mankind. By word of mouth, the image of Cai'er and Long Houchen gradually changed. They become the idols of all people, and the citizens' beliefs changed so much so that later, Long Houchen discussed with the congressman and banned the release of images in the Federation. However, his deeds with Cai'er and the Light Dawn Demon Hunter group had already affected the entire generations of the Union. While Long Houchen and Cai'er became idols, they had quietly come to the Knight's Holy Mountain accompanied by Yang Haohan. This was the 3rd time that Long Houchen had come to the Knight's Holy Mountain, and he had great feelings for this sacred place of knights. The first time he came here, he took Hao Yu with him, and the second time he came here, he took away the Star King. More than 10 years had passed, and he had grown from an ignorant teenager to a federal president. He had experienced a lot, paid a lot efforts, and gained a lot. There was still about a kilometer away from the light fog shrouding the Knight's Holy Mountain, and the rich bright aura of the Knight's Holy Mountain began to surge, and the golden light fog unexpectedly drifted out of control in the direction of Long Houchen and the other 2 men. What Long Houchen felt was a strong sense of closeness, and the light elements contained in the pale golden fog rushed towards him as if a child had found his home. Raising his left hand, there was a faint smile on Long Houchen's face, and the soft light element began to circle around his body. In the whole process, he did not release any of his own strength, everything was formed naturally. Yang Haohan, who was also a strong son of light and a sealed divine knight, could not help but sigh secretly when he saw this scene. Long Houchen had indeed practiced the spiritual powers of the light to the extreme. Even the light element treated him as its source. Long Houchen suddenly looked up and looked into the depths of the light and fog. Suddenly, the light fog in front of him was dispersed by itself, like a soldier obeying orders, and made away. 3 old men with physical disabilities were coming towards them quickly. For the dispersion of light and fog, the 3 old men were immediately surprised, as this was the first time they had encountered such a scene. However, when they saw Yang Haohan, they felt relieved. However, what surprised them even more was that it was not sealed divine knight of defense and coordination, but the young man around him that triggered the light and fog of the Knight's Holy Mountain. The Knight's Holy Mountain was almost an isolated place. Although several elders here had already seen Long Houchen, still only few had met him. At least this was the first time that all 3 had seen him. Lord Yang. The 3 elders approached and saluted Yang Haohan at the same time. Yang Haohan and Long Houchen responded with chivalry etiquette at the same time. Thank you for coming all the way here. Please lead us to the sealed cave, Yang Haohan said as he took out a token. The token in his hand was carved out from a whole piece of golden gemstone, with many runes of ancient elves on it. Seeing this token, the 3 elders bowed over and over again. They then walked forward, surrounded Long Houchen in the center, and each took out a golden token. The golden light flashed. Each golden token was inspired by the elders to release 6 runes, and a total of 18 runes of the 3 tokens appeared in the air, quickly blooming around the crowd. Then a huge golden whirlpool surrounded all 6 people. In the violent surge of the light fog, they quickly disappeared. Now Long Houchen was already different from that time, and he could feel that there was a very powerful legal array in the whole area of the Knight's Holy Mountain. It could be said that the whole Knight's Holy Mountain was built because of the legal array. If one wanted to know the secret here, one must be familiar with the legal array or be guided by someone here. A golden light converged, and they appeared in another place, and it was also a place where Long Houchen felt familiar. This was in a cave, the walls of the cave, inlaid with pieces of golden light gems. The faint golden light illuminated everything here. The light element in the cave was not strong, far less than in the Knight's Holy Mountain, but slightly stronger than that of the outside world. The cave was so huge that if one looked up, the top of the cave was at least 20 feet from the ground. The whole cave was irregularly round, with a diameter of at least more than 100 feet, just like a huge square. There were trapezoidal lattices on the ground, which were closely linked to each other and formed huge rings that converged towards the center of the underground square. In each grid, there was a dim ancient elf rune. Seeing this, Long Houchen finally remembered what this place was, and this was when the legal array transported him so that he could find the cave of Hao Yu. He didn't expect to be here again this time. Yang Haohan nodded to the three elders and said, "Thank you for leading the way. Please wait." "Yes." The three elders respectfully saluted to Yang Haohan. Yang Haohan walked up to Long Houchen and said, "Houchen, only one person can go into the sealed cave at a time. Cai'er and I will stay here and wait for you. Those predecessors have a wealth of experience and have slept here for thousands of years, so they will inevitably be a little strange in character. You should be careful. If you can't handle the situation, use your psychic power to stimulate the token in your hand, and you will be sent back here." As he spoke, he handed the token carved with golden gems to Long Houchen. Long Houchen took the token, nodded to Yang Haohan, and then walked towards the center of the underground square. There was a circle about 3 feet in diameter with the largest symbol in the center. However, when he was just about to start, he was stopped by the three elders who led the way. One of the elders hesitantly said to Yang Haohan, "Lord Yang, this does not seem to be in line with the rules. Only you can enter the sealed cave. This is..." Yang Haohan smiled and said, "I forgot to introduce to you all. This is Long Houchen, the new sealed divine knight of our Knight Temple. He has won the recognition of the sealed divine throne of eternity and creation and has been honored by the temple as the sealed divine knight of glory and leadership. He is also the head of the 6 sealed divine knights in our Knight Temple. He will be in charge of the Holy Mountains Order from now on." The three elders were surprised at the same time and how their expression when looking at Long Houchen suddenly changed. They were all old people in the Knight Temple, and therefore they knew what the sealed divine throne of eternity and creation meant. Seeing the three elders so surprised, Long Houchen smiled and his soft spiritual power came out of his body, went towards the three elders and enveloped them. The pure light element made the three elders shuddered, and the next moment indescribable comfort spread to every corner of their body. Even their mutilated limbs were no exception. Their respective spiritual powers surged like boiling, and after just a few breaths, their spiritual powers increased to a magnitude that could not be improved even after months of practice. At this point, the three elders had no doubt. Although their hearts were still full of shock, they quickly stepped aside and respectfully saluted to Long Houchen. Long Houchen came to the huge symbol in the center with Holy Mountains Order in his hand. Eyes slowly closed, he quietly felt everything around. When he was closing his eyes, his mental power immediately spread. Whether it was Yang Haohan, Cai'er, or the three elders, they all felt that their consciousness was blurred for a moment. This time, even Yang Haohan's face could not help but give a look of shock. What a powerful mental strength! In this array of Knight's Holy Mountain, even if the God of Devils were to come here, it would be impossible for his mental power to detect the interior of the Holy Mountain clearly. The Holy Mountains array contained extremely strong elements of light, and at the same time, there were thousands of wonderful methods. Many mysteries belonged to the ancient elves. Even the Knight Temple, as the direct controller of the Knight's Holy Mountain, could not fully understand the mysteries of this great array. However, Long Houchen's mental strength was not blocked at all here, and in a moment, it covered the whole Knight's Holy Mountain. As the owner of the Light God's Constitution and the Light God domain user, how could any Dharma array with light attribute be resistant to him? It was like a girl with a completely open heart and let him fully explore. Soon, Long Houchen felt everything he wanted to know. After carefully observing things around, he found that the Knight's Holy Mountain itself was made up of 9 light legal arrays. It was divided into 1 core legal array and 8 peripheral legal arrays. These 9 legal formations formed a brand new large array. The complexity of the arrangement of the legal array was the only thing he had ever seen in his life. Moreover, this legal array had a very strong limiting effect. Even if the level 9th strongman entered rashly, they would still suffer a great loss in this legal array. There were many light warcrafts living in the Knight's Holy Mountain, which was also the source for the Knight Temple's young knights to get their mounts. However, the real mystery of this Knight's Holy Mountain lay in the interior of the mountain. The position they were in at this time was the position of the eyes at the core of the 9 legal arrays. If one wanted to control the launch of the Knight's Holy Mountain, one needed to do it here. And the Holy Mountain's order in his hands was to open the full power of the legal array. In other words, it was the key to the prohibition. Holding the Holy Mountain's order above his head, Long Houchen slowly injected his spiritual power into it. As soon as the pure spiritual power entered the Holy Mountain's order, the golden light bloomed instantly. The Holy Mountain's order seemed to make a slight hum, and then all 9 arrays in the Knight's Holy Mountain responded. A circle of golden ripples spread from the feet of Long Houchen, igniting the ancient elf runes one by one. In just a few breaths, all the ancient elf runes at the core of the Knight's Holy Mountain were already shining. The runes seemed to come alive, and as the golden glow began to flow, some circles of golden runes rotated clockwise or counterclockwise. And around the Holy Mountain's order inside Long Houchen's hands, golden runes began to appear and were suspended in the air. Young Haohan told Long Houchen before he came here that when he opened the Holy Mountain's order, he would instantly know how to enter the sealed cave. Long Houchen had a feeling. Several kinds of auras transmitted to him by the Holy Mountain's order were different, with defense opening, killing opening, and the last one, the path to the land of the sealed place. When the Holy Mountain's order got triggered, a strong golden pillar of light suddenly burst from the foot of Long Houchen and instantly connected to the top of the cave, while the body of Long Houchen was completely covered by the golden pillar of light. The thick light element had reached an almost substantive level, and even Cai'er, who had the power of purification, felt a kind of difficult lag here. In order to arouse the Knight's Holy Mountain, it was not only necessary to have the Holy Mountain's order, but also to have a strong enough ability of light attribute. Any other attribute would not succeed. If a dark attribute had stolen the Holy Mountain's order and come here, then there were only two endings. One was that he was strong enough to escape, and the other more likely ending was to be hanged here by the element of light. The golden pillar of light lasted for about 30 seconds before it slowly disappeared. When the golden pillar fell, Long Houchen's body also disappeared. Covered by rich light elements, the distance between the space was very close. Long Houchen, through his previous exploration, actually knew the specific location of the sealed cave clearly, but this position was completely suppressed by the array of the Knight's Holy Mountain, and there was no Holy Mountain's order at that time. Even with his practice level, he also wasn't sure if he could break through and enter. This place was just below the Knight's Holy Mountain. The golden color around him gradually faded away, and the first thing Long Houchen felt was gloom and coldness. With his practice level, he still felt cold, which proved how strong it was, and it was definitely not just a change in temperature. Everything around him became clearer, and what appeared in front of Long Houchen was a corridor paved with green bricks. Darkness covered all the surrounding. Long Houchen emitted a touch of golden light himself, which could illuminate a few meters around him. The air in the corridor was very impure. And that gloomy and cold air was coming from the front. As soon as Long Houchen raised his hand, the soft white flame was lit. The fingertips flicked lightly, and a little white flame floated forward. Despite the fact that the spark was not big, where it passed, all the filth in the air was instantly burnt clean. As for whether the air was enough to breathe, it didn't matter to him. He just didn't like the impurity. At the same time, in the light of the white flame, he also saw things ahead clearly. The corridor slanted downwards, so the white flame fell directly on the wall of the cave in front of it. However, it did not go out like an oil lamp burning on the wall of the cave. It also did not burn out the green stone brick. Long Houchen walked forward with the light from the flame, and the Holy Mountain's order in his hands also exuded a faint golden light which could light the way up. This corridor was longer than Long Houchen had imagined. The more he walked forward, the more he could feel the cold aura, so much so that the psychic power in his body was stimulated to protect himself. The warm aura spread in his chest, and a thick warmth spread all over his body with the aura of life, and after walking around, Long Houchen no longer felt cold. There was a smile on his face, which was the power of Yi Xiaolei. Since Yi Xiaolei merged with him and became his wisdom furnace, she fell into a deep sleep. And Long Houchen also clearly felt the change of his body in the process of the fusion with Yi Xiaolei. When he felt a new heart growing under the energy of the Heart of Eternity, he suddenly realized that the original Heart of Eternity did not really bring him back to life. Perhaps, the Heart of Eternity could always support him to live, but he could not be regarded as a real person without a heart. In a sense, there was nothing wrong with him to be called as undead. He was just a special undead with the domain of light god. However, when the heart grew out, Long Houchen clearly felt the perfect fusion of the Yi Xiaolei's power and the Heart of Eternity, making him not only have a new heart, but this heart was also more powerful than the one before. What made him wonder that his heart had evolved, that the increase of spiritual power brought to him by the Heart of Eternity had disappeared. His inner powers were now about 560,000. This did not include the 90,000 spiritual powers originally added by the Heart of Eternity. The coldness could not affect him, so Long Houchen began to pace up. Indeed, he did not regard these eternal heroes as a threat, not only because he trusted his ancestors, but also because of his confidence in himself. By virtue of his own cultivation, coupled with the power of the sealed divine throne of eternity and creation and Hao Yu, Even if facing the god of devils, he would still have the confidence. It was nearly 300 meters downhill before the corridor came to an end. An arched gate appeared in front of Long Houchen. The door was a double open door, with many characters carved on it. If one were to look at it carefully, one could paint the scene of the war between mankind and the Devil's clan. And there were 2 words written on the gate: Eternal Heroes. On the stone door, many traces had been mottled. It had been there for a really long time. Despite the excellent materials, the years still left a clear mark. In order to protect the Alliance, these eternal heroes had been sleeping here for 6,000 years. Even if they were always in a deep sleep, they might wake up sometimes. They suffered from darkness and loneliness here. Compared to them, what we suffered before was nothing. Thinking about this, Long Houchen could not help but make a deep bow to the 4 big characters of eternal heroes on the stone gate. At the same time, he secretly made up his mind that no matter how difficult it was, he must correct the names of these 63 eternal heroes. When he stood up straight again, he slowly embedded the Holy Mountain's order in his hand into the only depression on the stone gate. When looking closely, he could not help but praise the craftsman's exquisite craftsmanship. A crisp and melodious voice rang up, like the sound of knocking on a bottle made of magic crystal. The sweet sound reverberated throughout the entire corridor, and the strange feeling made Long Houchen's mind clear. Then, the 2 stone doors began to give off a faint luster, but the Holy Mountain's order was still golden. The stone door slid quietly to both sides. The thickness of the stone gate was more than 1 meter. They had existed here for thousands of years, but they still opened so smoothly. There was no doubt that these 2 stone doors were not only exquisitely made, but also inscribed with magic array inside. The cold aura, at least 10 times colder than before, poured towards Long Houchen, and it instantly impacted his body. Surprisingly, the air inside was not impure, just extremely cold. The cold aura even made the breath of Long Houchen turned into ice. In front was a dark cave. No matter how high Long Houchen was, it was impossible to see anything in that absolutely dark place without any lighting. However, this time he did not light the flame of light. Instead, he bowed respectfully again and said, "Knight Temple, sealed divine knight of glory and leadership, Long Houchen, here to pay respect to the ancestors." He did not step into the dark cave. However, his voice was full of heartfelt reverence. Long Houchen's voice echoed inside the caves and the corridors, perhaps because it was too airtight that the echo continued for a long time. Long Houchen just bent over and had no intention of changing his posture at all. He maintained a respectful posture steadily and quietly. These ancestors, who paid the price of their lives for the Alliance and then endured 6,000 years of solitude, were definitely worth to pay respect for. Although I am curious about why a young man has come to here, your respectful attitude twice made me like you. A strange voice came from the grotto. It sounded stiff, and when speaking, there was a slight pause every 2 or 3 words, which sounded very strange. Long Houchen slowly straightened up, hammered his left chest with his right fist, and made a knight's salute again. The ancestors paid a lot for the Alliance and for mankind, and the respect of the younger generation is due. The stiff voice sounded again. You said just now, you are the sealed divine knight of glory and leadership. Where is that little doll named Yang Hao Han? He seems to be about 100 years old. Is he already dead at the hands of the devils? If I remember correctly, he should be the sealed divine knight of defense and coordination. Long Houchen said, Lord Yang is not dead, but he has given me the qualifications to communicate with his predecessors. The voice was a little deep. It seems that something has happened to the Alliance. For the first time, the Knight Temple has a title called the Sealed Divine Knight of Glory and Leadership, which has never been heard of before. There is another special case in which people pass on the news of our existence before they die. Come on, what do you want by coming here this time? Yeah, wait a minute. Before you do that, you have to prove to me that you truly are the Sealed Divine Knight. Judging from your exuberant aura of life, it should be in the prime of life. Does it mean that there is an unprecedented genius in the Knight Temple? Long Houchen respectfully said, the younger generation's name is Long Houchen, and he will be 26 years old in 3 months. What I have inherited is the power of the sealed divine throne of eternity and creation. What? The stiff voice suddenly became high-pitched. Then, Long Houchen felt a tremendous pressure coming. The pressure was not to push him out, but to pull in. However, Long Houchen stood there motionless and did not even release his spiritual power from the body. Scratch, scratch. Some strange voices sounded, and a faint green flame lit up not far in front of Long Houchen. The flame burning was not exuberant. However, in this extremely dark place, when suddenly there was a light, Long Houchen got a little surprised. The green flame appeared in the hands of a man who was 2 meters tall and lanky. He was wearing a tattered grey robe, revealing his iron grey skin here and there. His eyes twirled stiffly, and there was a faint grey glow. This was not a person, to be exact, it should be a zombie, but his body was well preserved and there was no place that became rotten. He slowly came to Long Houchen, and the scratching sound was exactly what he made when he was walking. His movements were so stiff that he could no longer bend his knees and he walked very slowly. However, in Long Houchen's perception, the zombie was full of danger. And his perceptual judgment is based on his own practice. In terms of age, as a result of becoming a zombie, he still looked like the person he was when he died, about 50 or 60 years old. He didn't look too old. Ordinary people would have screamed in horror when they saw a lifeless zombie in this dark cave. However, when Long Houchen saw him, his face became more and more respectful. "How do you do?" Long Houchen saluted respectfully. The zombie said, "Let me see the sealed divine throne of eternity and creation," in a tone full of excitement. Long Houchen hesitated for a moment and said, "It doesn't seem appropriate here. I'm afraid it will affect the sleep of other ancestors. It may even hurt them." The light elements of the sealed divine throne of eternity and creation were indeed very powerful. If the power of the imperial weapon was shown here, the eternal heroes will likely get hurt directly, even though they were powerful. However, the zombie smiled. "Gah. Young man, do you think the power of light will hurt us? Although I hate the way I am now, I have to say that the necromancer who made that reincarnation scroll was the first genius that I knew. His reincarnation scroll not only turned us into the undead, but also retained the attributes of our abilities when we were alive. Do you think that, as the builders of the first generation of the 6 temples, some of us would have the attribute of darkness?" Long Houchen once again learned about the power of Deathly Hallows, the scourge of the undead, Electrolux. No wonder that reincarnation scroll was called a super forbidden spell. In that case, please be careful. Long Houchen took a few steps back, and his eyes lit up. There was a soft golden glow in his clear eyes, and then a sacred aura full of majesty spread from him. The huge light and shadow bloomed behind Long Houchen, but in this narrow corridor, the light and shadow of the sealed divine throne of eternity and creation could not be fully stretched out. This video will end here.